Good evening. We're going to call Board of Education meeting 1570 to order. Dr. Lake, do we have any changes to the agenda?
Yes, we do. We added a contract under 9.07. It's our contract that we discussed in January with Burton Jones, but we needed to get that to you today, so that's all been taken care of.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda with the additional contract as presented? Motion by Mike.
Second?
Second by, was that Kathy?
No.
Megan. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All right, and at this time, we will stand for the pledge, but first, we would like to invite Chloe and Eve from Concord, Charlotte and Caden from Gifted Education, and Emma and Aiden from PEGS to come forward to lead us in our pledge this
We
evening.
got a full house. Come on. So you guys can either, come on up, come on, don't be scared. Come on, you can either face the flag, or you can face everybody if you'd rather look at people while you start the pledge. It's totally up to you. What are we gonna do? This way? All right, we'll do this way. All right. How about it?
Thank you, guys. Tonight, we are recognizing Concord Elementary School and Gifted Education, followed by a presentation from some of our PEG students. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Brian Meckel, principal of Concord Elementary School, to present his school's recognitions.
You guys expect me to hold a mic and read from a card? Oh, gosh. All right, so I have the wonderful honor of kind of introducing and talking about 4 special individuals at Concord. So first, I'm going to have Eve, why don't you come on up? So Eve is one of our 5th grade students, and these messages are coming from her classroom teacher. So it's an honor to recognize Eve for this award. Eve has demonstrated outstanding behavior, academic progress, and a positive attitude towards learning. She's always revising and improving her work to make it the best it can be. She has shown her teachers and classmates that she is a kind and respectful person who is always willing to help others. Her dedication and commitment to her schoolwork, leadership roles within our school, and extracurricular activities outside of our school embody the Concord core values. Continue to be an excellent role model for others.
So Eve, we have a certificate recognizing you as Student of the Month, so there's that for you. And then here is a t-shirt for you as well. So congratulations. All right, here you go. We're gonna get a quick picture too, okay? We're probably that's gonna make us go that way. So we probably should just put tape on the floor.
Now, it is a coincidence that her best friend Chloe was also picked. I didn't know the level of their friendship, but here we go. Come on up, Chloe. So Chloe also happens to be in 5th grade, and they're in the same studio classroom. Chloe is an exemplary student. She consistently puts forth her best effort in all her schoolwork. Chloe is a tremendous academic partner and a good friend to everyone in the studio. Chloe works hard to make Concord a better place. She recently was awarded a leadership role as an announcement leader. Chloe is passionate about reading and was selected for the Concord Book Battle Team. Chloe is part of the Strings program at Concord and is involved in many activities outside of school, including show choir. Chloe is a wonderful representation of Concord's core values.
So we also have a certificate for you recognizing you as Student of the Month, and you can never have too many limited t-shirts, right?
For sure. We
Sure?
got a lot of spirit
All right,
days.
so here we go.
A lot of spirit
All right,
days.
a lot of spirit wear. All right, you're gonna have to scoot over that way. You do just stay there, so we don't have to move over each time. All right? Awesome, congratulations.
So the next person I'm going to introduce to you guys is our support staff person of the year. This is Emily Dutenhofer. So I am happy to recognize Mrs. Dutenhofer. However, it feels a bit strange to give her such a formal title. Around Concord, she goes by Nurse Emily, and all of our students know that they can count on her to help them feel better. Bumps, bruises, and the occasional break, Nurse Emily is there to help. She can ease the nerves and calm a crier, all while keeping a detailed log and clear communication with our families. I have yet to see a situation that she is not prepared for. Nurse Emily consistently plans and interacts with our staff regarding grade level training, visits from local programs, and wellness topics. Thank you, Nurse Emily, for taking such good care of Concord.
Congratulations. We have a certificate recognizing you as Support Staff Person of the Year, and then you get a $25 gift certificate to our online store to get all kinds of spirit cards. So there you go. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So last but certainly not least is our 22-23 Teacher of the Year, Mrs. Kim Boyd. Come on up. So it is my pleasure to recognize Mrs. Kim Boyd as Concord's 22-23 Teacher of the Year. Kim has been a Lindbergh teacher for 18 years, building relationships all along the way. Mrs. Boyd possesses a keen ability to meet kids where they are, develop a relationship with them, and to help them grow. Her learning environment is a safe place for students to learn and interact with each other. She and her students are also known to show high levels of participation on our Spirit Days. For Dream Job Day this year, she was a rock star. She is. This care and energy carry over to her family communication as well. She keeps her families in the loop with clear, consistent communication. In addition to her positive relationships, Mrs. Boyd is a fabulous teacher. She provides her students with excellent instruction and goes to the outer limits daily to make sure students' needs are met. She knows how to individualize instruction so that her students are challenged and supported in each subject of their learning. Mrs. Boyd is a strong advocate for her learners and seeks advice from other teachers and colleagues when she needs support. She is always learning and adapting to better herself and her students. We are happy that Mrs. Boyd represents our Concord teachers.
Thank you.
Congratulations. So you have a certificate recognizing you as Teacher of the Year, and then also a $25 gift certificate as well. So congratulations.
Thank you, Concord. Congratulations to our students. And our Miss Boyd was my daughter's teacher in first grade, and she cried on the last day of school. And I've received quite a few calls from Nurse Emily, and Band-Aids. So thank you, guys. And now we will move to Dr. Tracy Bednarik-Humes with our Gifted Education Coordinator.
All right, so we'll start with Charlotte Lawson, if you could come on up. So Charlotte was nominated by Mrs. Gordon, and I have some words to share from Mrs. Gordon. Charlotte is the type of student teachers enjoy teaching. She is aware of who she is, but Charlotte also acknowledges her shortcomings. She's open to learning about herself and others to practice better collaboration and to build stronger relationships with others. She's fully embraced the LEAP philosophy of the 4 C's, and we just really enjoy having you as part of our program. Congratulations.
So Charlotte, we have a certificate for you recognizing you as Student of the Month, and we also have a T-shirt for you. And I would also like to point out that you guys both are gifted because you stood where you're supposed to. They didn't keep moving around. So here you go, Charlotte. Oh, hey, we gotta get a picture. We gotta get a picture.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Here you go.
Hold up your certificates.
There you go.
Congratulations. All right, and now we would like to have Caden Juang come up. And Caden is a middle schooler at Truman, an 8th grader, and he was nominated by Mrs. Moshman. And so I have some things to share from Mrs. Moshman. So when she was asked to nominate somebody who shows excellent growth in the LEAP program, she immediately thought of you. Growth in LEAP is defined as learning to be a self-aware individual, an empowered learner, an innovative designer, an engaged collaborator, and a global citizen. Caden started his middle school year in 2020 on Zoom, And from day one in Mrs. Moshman's class, even though it was on Zoom with a strange puppet named Cheryl, do you remember her?
She was the best.
Caden was always striving to do his best work. He was punctual, always asking questions, and respectful. Over the years, Caden has grown to be comfortable in his own skin and now willingly seeks advice from his peers through team projects. He is imaginative and not afraid to try new things. Many times it will be something that Caden says off the cuff during planning and brainstorming that turns into the most perfect and creative idea. Caden has a great smile and loves learning and listens to feedback and works to make projects better. From his first video in 6th grade, choosing to put all Truman Middle School students in Mrs. Moshman's golden box, to his final project of the Lucky Leprechaun Escape Room, Caden has demonstrated great growth overall. While working with his class as a creative team to design, plan, and execute their original escape room, the Lucky Leprechaun, Caden stepped up as a leader. Caden's final large-scale project was phenomenal. All the students in the room were a color of the rainbow, and Caden insisted on being the color indigo. He created the books for the bookshelf and again was so creative in his work. After the event, many parents emailed to share how authentic it was and how much they enjoyed escaping and seeing their kids play the parts. I'm honored to present to you tonight a wonderful young man, Caden Duong. Congratulations.
Caden, we have a certificate recognizing you as the Student of the Month, so that's for you. And then we also have a t-shirt for you. There you go, buddy. All right, we're going to get a picture really quick, so if you want to hold that up.
All right, Mrs. Blackwell, Mrs. Mary Blackwell, if you could come up. Mrs. Mary Blackwell is our 2022-23 Teacher of the Year, and we have some great things to say about her as well. So it's my pleasure tonight to be here to share why Mary Blackwell is the Gifted Department's 2022 Lindbergh Teacher of the Year. Mary teaches elementary gifted students in our LEAP enrichment program. She is a rock star teacher, must be a theme. She creates gifted curricula that constantly blows me away in its creativity, its deep rigor of content, and its high interest to students. She's a master teacher and a strong leader for gifted education in Lindbergh and beyond. Mary has provided consistent leadership in curriculum writing for the gifted team. Her units are thematic, high interest, and go beyond problem solving and project-based activities. She constantly amazes me with her ability to weave technology skills into lessons that present real-world problem-solving opportunities. She provides mentorship to new teachers and helps train these teachers to carry out our gifted identification protocols, along with supporting their acclimation to gifted teaching. Mary understands the unique social-emotional needs of gifted students and embeds social-emotional mini-lessons and discussions into her units. Additionally, she manages all the details of our yearly space camp trip to Huntsville, Alabama, which is an overwhelming task, if you ask me. Mary's passion for gifted education is evident in her over 20 years commitment to the gifted team. She's always on the lookout for opportunities to use technology, access grants, or ways to share new learning experiences with students. She's been the recipient of several Lindbergh Foundation grants and grants from the Civil Air Patrol. Lastly, she's been involved in advocating for gifted programming at the state level, as she was recently appointed as a Region 8 co-director for the Missouri Gifted Association. And she's also done work with the state on forming the gifted learning outcomes. So we're extremely fortunate to have Mary as part of our gifted team. Thank you and congratulations.
All right, Mary. Certificate recognizing you as Teacher of the Year and a 25.
All right, I guess I'm just going to stay up here, and I'm going to call my PEG students up. So Emma Day and Aiden Chen, if you could come up. And they have some words of thank you to the board for supporting gifted education. Are you okay holding the mic? Do you want to do that? Okay.
I would like to thank the board for supporting the gifted education because PEGS has really benefited me a lot. I could finally have something that challenged me. I have friends in PEGS that are learning the same thing as me. We also have similar interests. The teachers made me feel welcome when I just joined PEGS and when I skipped a grade. PEGS has always made me feel like that I belong here.
Good job.
I'm grateful for Pegs and Leap because I've made lots of friends and I finally have something challenging to me. There are 4 teachers in Pegs. You might say, hey, but there are 5 grades. Well, Miss Machiko teaches both the 1st and 2nd grades. Miss Bergman teaches the 3rd grade, and the 4th and 5th grade have different teachers, Mrs. Waterford and Mrs. Brown, but they share the same room. I love all my friends and teachers in Pegs and Leap.
Do you want to get your?
Thank you. And at this time, we will take a short break so that people who came for the recognition portion of the meeting can leave if they want to, instead of staying for the business part of the meeting.
Have a good night. Enjoy the warm weather tomorrow.
Sorry, getting a couple things in order. We will move to 5.0 consent resolutions. We have one this evening, Lindbergh Leaders 2023. Do I have a motion to approve the consent resolution as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Kathy,
Second.
second by Matt. I will be abstaining from this vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes 6-0 with one abstention. We will move to 6.0 citizen communication regarding agenda items. We have one this evening. Mr. Bitzenberg, if you'd like to come forward. And you'll have 3 minutes, and there's a timer.
And then if you push the button on the microphone right there, when it's green, you're good to go.
Push it and leave it alone? Am I
Good.
live? Okay. Well, I had the pleasure of talking personally with several of you when we had to meet the board night. Who are those? So you know what I'm going to talk about. It's school start times.
I do, lay it
I
on
know
us.
you're doing that for next year, and I brought a cheat sheet. I was going to leave it. They said I could talk. So just basically, I was hoping to be some more parents here than this. Sometimes it takes a lot of parents to get on board with this because that's what happened in Columbia, Missouri. The parents got on board with wanting to start later. The reason it's important is because the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that adolescents should not start school before 8:30. Their sleep patterns are different. This is based on sleep science. They go to bed later. They need 8 to 10 hours sleep. And the significance of this is the adolescents I'm reading here who do not get enough sleep are more likely to be overweight, not engage in daily physical activity, suffer from symptoms of depression, engage in unhealthy risk behavior such as drinking, smoking tobacco, and using illicit drugs to perform poorly in school. One of the pictures you'll see is a student yawning in school, and so any teachers can testify that's not a nice thing to say your kid's yawning at you at school. It's not anything to do with their delivery, it's the kid's not getting enough sleep probably. So there are barriers, as the email I read, Regional sports, getting there to that thing. Sports are important to me. Varsity sports are the tail wagging the dog. The bulk of the students are not in that. We need to take care of their physical needs. They need that rest. They need to start later. And perhaps Lindbergh can be the leader in getting this started at the local level, regional, and state. Because the parents at Columbia were so happy with their students, and they got to start later. I hope we do that here too. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Oh, one other note, since I got a minute.
Yep.
A retired superintendent who I quoted to the people I talked to, I don't have his name out in my mind right now, but he said, he was decades long a superintendent. He said the most significant and rewarding thing he ever did in his career was starting school later. So keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move to 7.0 communications. Ms. Vetter, our calendar of events.
Yes, thank you. Have a lot going on between now and the next board meeting. A reminder that there's no school this Friday, March 17th, and then we will also be out next week, March 20th through the 24th for spring break, so hopefully everyone can enjoy that. Our Teaching and Learning Board Advisory meets on March 28th, and then Parent Leadership meeting is March 29th. The Lindbergh High School Band hosts its annual 36-hour music-thon, and that's starting at 7 a.m. March 31st through 7 p.m. April 1st, so definitely go check that out. We will be recognizing School Library Month beginning on April 1st, and then April 4th is Election Day, and it's also, the middle schoolers will be singing at the Cardinals game that night at 6:45, so tune in for that. April 5th is the Lindbergh Foundation Scholarship Night. There's no school April 7th or April 10th. Student Life Advisory meets April 13th. The high school spring play is April 13th through April 15th. On April 14th, we will hold our banquet for Lindbergh leaders. April 18th is Night of Jazz, and April 19th is Middle School Percussion Concert. And then lastly, we will be back here on Thursday, April 20th for our regular Board of Education meeting.
Thank you. We'll move to 7.02, report of meetings. Does anyone have any state or other meetings or parent group meetings to report about? I did attend the governing council meeting this month, as did Megan as the alternate. We elected new Board of Education members for SSD for Subdistrict 2, which covers Melville, and I'm sorry, they're combined with someone else. I don't remember off the top of my head. And then Subdistrict 7, which is Parkway, no, Florissant, Pattonville, oh my gosh, I'm looking at the wrong page. Okay. Afton, Bayless, Hancock, and Melville is Subdistrict 2, and Subdistrict 7 is Clayton and Rockwood, and I apologize about that. And then we will, in June, elect the board member for Subdistrict 1, which is Hazelwood. So, that's all. Oh, and they did their budget presentation for next year. They're looking to add around 50 positions, and you can see the rest of their budget presentation on their board docs. Anyone else?
And a couple things. I did notice that they announced the new Melville superintendent from SSD, so they'll have 51 positions then to open. I attended the virtual spring conference, and it was weird. They read to us and they danced, and this was virtual, so we had school board members from all the regions, and wow, I thought it was cute and fun, and got a kick out of it. It was just very different based on the reading legislation. So I'm sure that when we fill out the survey about that and what would be some quality things to present next time, it may not be that, although that would be very fitting for some early childhood, maybe reading specialists and teachers. Thanks.
I just attended fun stuff, like Beauty and the Beast, which was amazing, and it was so cute to see the little princesses come in their costumes, and bingo night at First Sparing, which they raised like $11,000 or $15,000 in one day.
It was like 14,000.
14,
Really
yeah.
split because it was a double.
Yeah,
Middle
so
schools.
that was really awesome. And then he attended Equity Night, which was fantastic, you too. I already talked about that, but really nice job. And that's about it. So kind of had a little fun this month.
Anyone else?
I attended the equity night as well, and I know Megan and Jennifer did as well. And I just wanted to say I think you guys did a great job, and it's always nice to see the students up there willing to share their experiences because they are different from our student. And it's a good reminder that we have a very diverse student body who has a lot of different needs.
Thanks. All right, Ms. Vetter, review of upcoming Board of Education meeting agendas.
Thank you. We
Oh,
have.
I'm sorry.
Not
I
yet.
skipped our announcement. I think I did that last month as well. Dr.
You did.
Lick, you're in charge of it. I just.
You did. So I do have an announcement tonight. So March is School Board Recognition Month. So just want to take a moment and just recognize all of you up here and our two new board members that are students as well. You, as a board member, you all know this, but it's a voluntary position. It can be thankless at times. It can be very rewarding at times. It can be very challenging at times. But just want to say publicly, thank you for serving your community and just making sure that, you know, you guys always are looking at trying to provide the best opportunities for our kids, and our community is very, very fortunate to have all of you up here at this dais being leaders in our community. So thank you for your service. With that, you also, though, have some cards if you haven't seen it. ECE kiddos made you some thank you cards and appreciative cards as well. So with that, I think we're going to do a picture. Okay, Beth, want to make sure I didn't forget the picture. So we're going to get out here and get a picture. All right. No $25 gift certificates for you guys.
All right, Ms. Vetter, review of our upcoming agendas.
Yes. We will have 2 meetings in April. So April 11th, we will hold a special meeting. Tentatively planned for this meeting is the Success Ready Students Network approval, also swearing in new board members and reorganization of the board. Immediately following that special meeting, we will hold a workshop where we will hear our learning report. Then we will meet again on April 20th at 4:30 for another workshop where we will hear the district's budget goals and setting, as well as the Compass update. Then at 7 p.m., we'll hold our regular Board of Education meeting. Some agenda items include for the record reports on safety program, emergency response and intervention plan, regular business items, and Lindbergh High School is scheduled to be present for recognition.
Thank you. We have no Board of Education member appointments this evening, and now we will move to our MSBA Board Report. Colin, thank you.
Welcome to the March edition of the Missouri School Boards Association's Board Report. We begin with a look at the importance of advocacy on the state level. It's critical that board members and superintendents communicate frequently with state legislators about the impact of proposed legislation on your school district. MSBA's Spring Meeting Series, which is focused on advocacy, got underway on March 1st with the Spring Virtual Meeting. In addition to updates from MSBA President Ray Murphy, MSBA Governmental Relations Director Brant Shields, and MSBA Executive Director Melissa Randall, the meeting featured a presentation from New York Times bestselling author Eric Litwin and Dr. Gina Pepin. Together, they co-authored the book The Power of Joyful Reading. They emphasize the power of joyful and immersive learning, and that school board members have a unique opportunity to bring the community together and celebrate the learning that takes place in schools.
How can you let them know that that there is joy, even though the scores are reflecting something different. And of course, it's just hearing that. And like we talk about classroom community and making students feel valued, and that inclusiveness and that different perspectives. I think being a board member, you have such amazing power to do that for
Yes.
a staff member that is working
Yes.
with the community.
As a former teacher, you need advocates. And it's very difficult because joy is often seen as the outcome of success. And what's needed is that joy is not just the outcome of success, joy is the process of success. And that needs to be supported from the top down, as there's going to be a lot of pressure to hammer home certain skills. And I understand that. And we want the kids to have those skills. And we are all for supporting whatever instruction you have, whether it's phonics-based or book-based. The goal of the joyful experiences is to feed that, to support that. But we want to advocate that it will work better if it's joyful and immersive.
Throughout March, MSBA will host live lunch and learn virtual advocacy programs every Friday. And make plans now to visit Jefferson City for Advocacy Day and the Student Showcase, held on March 28th at the Capitol. As the legislative session progresses, we will continue to keep you updated through our Legislative Voice newsletters sent to members via email each Friday during the session, through critical issue alerts and periodic webinars. Governor Parsons signed the fiscal year 2023 early supplemental budget bill at the end of February, which includes $20 million to provide school safety grants to Missouri local education agencies. The grant program aims to support physical security upgrades and associated technology in school facilities. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is finalizing the grant details and will share allowable uses and further guidance in the near future. The governor's fiscal year 2024 budget recommendations include an additional $50 million to further support school safety efforts. Visit DESE's website for more information. MSBA's Future Builders Foundation is now accepting applications for the Early Childhood Education Program of the Year Awards. There will be 3 awards for exemplary early childhood education programs based on school district size. Applications will be judged by the Future Builders Board of Directors. The deadline for submitting an application is March 31st. The awards will be presented at the 2023 MSBA Annual Conference in Kansas City. Application information is available on the MSBA website. And last but certainly not least, it's March, which means it's School Board Recognition Month. All of us at MSBA sincerely want to thank each and every one of you for all that you do. Your hard work and dedication to your schools and communities are appreciated, and your commitment to all students does not go unnoticed. So with that, thanks for allowing us to have some time at your board meeting, and we'll see you in April for the next MSBA Board Report.
Thank you, Colin. We will move to 8.01 Cabinet Updates. We will begin with Dr. McKinney.
Thank you. HR Board Advisory met this month, and we talked about several topics. The first was really a slight change in the way that we hire elementary teachers. So it was a process change. We went through that process and that program for this year. We also talked about the teacher contract renewal process. We discussed what that looks like for probationary teachers, tenure contract consider teachers, as well as already tenured teachers. Finally, we talked about difficult to fill positions. These are specialized positions such as Project Lead the Way, and our process for recruiting and retaining and getting talented people in those very difficult to fill positions. Thanks.
Thank you. Joelle?
Our facilities advisory did not meet this month. We're meeting in April, so I don't have any report from that. The finance advisory committee met. We went over all the items for the board meeting, the bids, the change orders, and the CMAR, which is coming up next, so I won't steal that thunder. But we also had a really, I think, engaging conversation with our student reps that came about bond issues. And really the whole committee really talked a lot about how bond issues work and, what if it doesn't pass? And so that interest is really developing from that committee. We've been talking about it for a while. It's been a compass goal, so it was a very good conversation.
Thank you. And Dr. Sparks?
So Student Life did not meet since our last board meeting. Technology Board Advisory did meet, and we're in the process of an ongoing project with building a technology skills matrix. So we continued the work at that last meeting of gathering feedback about how to start developing that, and really landed on focusing on the elementary level first and building the skills matrix and then building it up through secondary afterward. Teaching and Learning Board Advisory talked about the elementary literacy pilots that are currently going on, so reviewed the pilots that are in place as well as the process for making a decision, which will be coming to the board in May, and gathered feedback from the advisory around the process, what's clear about the process, what suggestions do they have about the decision-making process, as well as how and what to communicate with families as that decision is finalized.
Thank you. We will now move to our student representatives, Althea and Adam.
Thank you. So tonight I'll just start with a congratulations for our racquetball participants. They recently competed in Portland, Oregon to participate in the USA Racquetball High School National Championships and to come second place overall, so congratulations to them. And then multiple students also got individual awards and joined the All-American team for that as well. On another note, there are numerous celebrations involving Women's History Month at the high school currently, most notably the work of Gender Equity Club, which has been using various forms of multimedia, both within the school and outside of the school, to highlight the change-making women of both the Lindbergh community and society as a whole. Some fundraisers of interest. Our environmental club recently did a plant fundraiser to support the Rainforest Foundation, which has been very successful, I've heard. CAP recently held an ACT/SAT book drive to help out with some of their initiatives regarding that. And then National Honor Society did fundraising for Lindbergh Light the Way, which assists in programs like the Summer Cafe, the Giving Tree, and the College Kickstart program. Some artistic expression events we've had come up recently is Night of the Bands. I actually got to attend that, and it was incredible, and I heard that multiple of the participants in that night did go to district solo and ensemble, and I think we had over 40 kids qualify for state in that, so congratulations to them as well. I know that the Strolling Strings of LHS are currently hosting a talent show, so that's going to be a great thing to see once it comes up. And then I also got to attend Beauty and the Beast, which I heard was amazing, and as Ms. Watts said, it was certainly very cute to see all of the kids in their Disney princess costumes. And then finally, the League of Women Voters did some voting recruitment at one of our lunch periods recently, and it was just really amazing seeing the promotion of civic engagement and participation at the high school level. And then I'll hand it over to Althea.
I would love to congratulate our mock trial team, which out of only 10 selected teams in the SCL area, they are going to all state competitions. As well as me and Adam have done some work for Adam's 2023-2024 school year project of student focus groups and creating a network to help the student board representatives really get in touch with students of all grade levels here at Lindbergh. As well as for Lindbergh seniors, the Foundation Scholarship Night is on April 5th this year. Congratulations to all of the seniors who received a very competitive Lindbergh Foundation Board Scholarship. As well as the student body is very excited for spring break. We have had a great turnout at our Battle of the Classes.
Althea, I think everybody's ready for spring break.
Well, staff included. We had a great turnout at our Battle of the Classes assembly this year as students are really demonstrating their spirit. And this also shows glimpses of the pre-pandemic spirit that was not quite taken root yet at the high school, but it's coming back and we're excited for it. Thank you.
Thanks. Does anyone have any questions? Or thank you so much. I love hearing about what's going on in the schools from you guys every month, so thanks. We have action items by consent 9.01 to 9.10. Would anyone want to remove any of these items for individual consideration? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve consent items 9.01 to 9.10?
So moved.
Motion by Julia,
Second.
second by Mike. Are there any questions or discussion?
I just wanted to point out that we had a couple of really generous gifts to the schools this month, and so just wanted to give thanks to that. And it's always nice to see the community supporting our schools, and we just feel
Yes.
really lucky that we have that support.
Yes, I wanted to say thank you to Jennifer Rich, Emily Hines, and the Wibblehuth family for their generosity in these gifts to our schools.
I did have a question about school start times, and I'm sure I missed something somewhere. Again, been busy going to Beauty and the Beast and trivia and bingo nights and stuff like that. But is our community okay with the switch that we've made?
So the feedback that we had from our most recent survey really shows mixed reactions. In general, the K-8 plan, everyone loves. There is trepidation that high school would move a little bit earlier in the day. But yet there's understanding as to why, where I have not received any feedback that is extremely negative. Some of the solutions would be pretty extreme changes to what we have currently planned. So that would take, as our citizen statement tonight really referenced, there's a regional component to some of those suggestions where if we were to move and do a more aggressive shift where high school would start significantly later and elementary would start earlier, it does result in students who would need to miss class to participate in athletics. And we have about 35% of our students who participate in extracurriculars who would end up missing instructional time. So in order to meet the needs of instruction throughout the day and ensure that all students have access to instructional time, this is our best solution to improve the safety of the high school environment and to ensure that students are able to be at school. And universally, it seems like the community is accepting of the change.
Okay. And also, I think the financial piece was a few $1 million. If we were going to change that, is that right?
Correct. Even making minor changes to the start times would have been a significant financial impact. And to do what we would have called the dream plan was over $2 million. Yeah, it was significant.
Would that have been to have a whole new bus route so that everybody
We basically would have had to have doubled the number of buses in order to get the routes running simultaneously to one another. Yes.
And I think it's important too to note that not this year, because they started at 8 o'clock, but the years before, they started at 7:25, and now it's 7:45, which is, you had one that graduated when it was 7:25. So it's an improvement. It's not, we'd love to be at the ideal 8:30, but you have to kind of factor those things in as well.
And to that point, with secondary riding the same buses, middle school right now starts at 7:40. So high school students who are riding buses with middle school students have to do a 7:40 drop-off. We're actually moving that back 5 minutes because high school has a 7:45 drop-off that is being proposed for next year. So for students riding bus transportation, we actually will see a slight increase in amount of time that students can sleep in the morning. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. So I had a motion by Julia and a second by Mike. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. 10.01, individual action items. Selection of construction management at risk, CMAR, for future Prop 2024 projects. Do I have a motion to select BSI Constructors, Inc. as the firm offering the best value for the district and capable of performing desired services for the construction management at risk, CMAR, future Prop 2024 project, and authorize administration to negotiate a contract as presented?
So moved, only if you repeat that again.
Anyone else want to make the motion? Motion by Megan, second by, who is it? Matt. All right. Any questions for Joelle? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. We have no for the record reports this evening, so we will move to 11.02 other reports. We have 3 this evening. We will start with our school climate, parent, family, and community involvement program evaluation with Dr. Lake.
Sure. So, thank you. So, different title. 5 years ago, we started the listening and learning tour when I came in, engaging the community. So with the new MSEP 6, it also has a community survey piece, so we've kind of merged that together. So I'm going to kind of go through my piece of this community engagement with the listening and learning, and then Beth, you've already seen the survey results in the workshop, correct, Beth? We demonstrated that to them.
Correct.
Yeah.
But we're going to share a few pieces of feedback from the parents.
Yep, from the parents tonight. So you're going to get a little bit more information, but you've seen some of this information. So next slide, Colin. So this year we did 21 in person. You know, obviously the previous years, 2 years with COVID, I wasn't able to do that. That's less than I did the first year when I did 83 of these. Anybody that would listen to me, I would go talk to them. So we did 21, which is, we feel like a good balance. We did one online. And then that's a great view afterwards, the YouTube views, which is good. So it shows people are engaged. They're hearing an update on what's going on in the district. Next slide, Colin. So this is kind of the results. And I would just like to point out the 471 is quite a bit. I think the second year we were probably about that, maybe a little less than that. But the first year was the most. Obviously, it was closer to 800 that first year. But I also did a lot more of those engagement opportunities. But you can see the information we're getting is predominant group is from our parents. But there's a nice representation and voice across our district and stakeholders there that you can see. Next slide, Colin. And then this is kind of broken down by the building. LHS makes sense. They have the most students, the most parents. But there's a lot of good representation from all of our buildings, which I think is a great representation of our district, of how engaged our community is and our parents are and our students are in the process of wanting to provide feedback to the district. Next slide, Colin. And then just want to remind everybody, that first year when we came in and we started to focus our work, we asked our community, you know, what is it that we as a district need to focus on in our next 5 years in our strategic plan? And these are our success measures. These 5 success measures, they guide our work. This is what we focus on. So we asked, you know, the community, you had to rank these 1 to 12. So you had to pick them. You had to go 1 to 12. You couldn't like 1A, 1B, it was 1 to 12. And so you look on there, there's lots of traditional ways like state reading and math scores. People could have chose that. Personalized learning, parent satisfaction is something, you know, is that important to us? Yes, you know, things like that. So we got the opportunity, everybody got the opportunity to rank those. And next slide, Colin. And after ranking those, it was very clear from the feedback that this, in this order, was the order of importance. High quality teachers in the classroom, making sure we take care of our kids and our teachers, mastery of those 4 skills, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. If you develop those, teaching content and teaching our Missouri state standards with that lens, our kids are gonna have an advantage. Getting out of the one-size-fits-all educational approach to our students, meeting learners where they are, and providing our staff the tools they need to be able to personalize that experience for our students. And then happy kids. You know, we need to make sure that our kids are happy and they feel like that they are getting a good education and that they're connected to their school. So when you look at our work, everything that we do is dialed to all 5 of those, and we always make sure that if we can't plug it into one of those 5, then we're not going to do that work. And I think it's really important to say, this is what our community told us. Almost close, 800 people responded and said, and ranked these and said, this is your work, this is what's important to you. Next slide, Colin. And so every year I ask this question, and I've said this before, organizations don't ask these questions enough, and I think it's great that we ask these every year to our community, that we want to get that to make sure that we're not missing anything. So, I think it's always important to say, hey, what are we doing well that we need to keep doing? What are those things that, we have here that, hey, don't take for granted and keep doing those? What are things that we can improve on? What are areas that we need to, we're doing them, but we're not so good at them, but we need to improve at them, but we need to keep doing them. And then don't ask that question enough in organizations, is what are things that we need to take off the plate? All we tend to do is add. So what are things that we need to strategically abandon? And so with this, the next slide, Colin, so you can see these are things that we're doing well. And when you look at this, I think it's important, these are kind of some circles that kind of highlight that. The high quality staff shows up, which back to our success measures, having high quality teachers in the classroom shows up, academics, communication. So if you go to the next slide, Colin, you can kind of look at the number, and I really want to highlight the number of responses tonight to these 3 questions. So, 56, and 55, 56 right there with the academics, the high quality staff, communication, and I think, the preparing students for success, we've been talking that about, we just don't want to prepare kids to do well at school, like, necessarily just knowing how to take a test or do those things, but how do we help prepare them for life and make sure they have the skills necessary to be successful in life with that academic needs that they need to be successful in life. So that balanced approach of meeting those academic needs as well as those well-rounded skills that they need to be successful in life. So the highlighted ones, the bolded ones are ones that kind of show up the last couple years. So Colin, if you go to the next slide, these are things that we can improve on, and every year, communication is something we can improve on, and every year, it's right there at the top if we do a really good job of it. So next slide, Colin. But if you look at it, it's not as many responses that we need to improve on it. There's 31, and then the academics drops all the way down to 22. We can always be better at our academics. That's what we should be striving for, is how do we get better with our academics, as well as, providing that environment for our kids to thrive. And you provide that, they will reach their academic potential. Transportation and parking, that's something that, in looking at our next bond issue, we're talking about site circulation, and we could use the high school there. That's a no-brainer. That's obvious, right, with the construction that's going on. But, you think about Crestwood. You go over the hill there at dismissal time, and that traffic is backing up on the street. So how do we that's a big, deep lot. So in this next bond, if we're fortunate enough to be successful, how do we get that traffic on that property and off that street for safety? So just looking at those kinds of things is important. So yes, glad that they're saying we can improve that, because that's going to really tie into hopefully having a successful bond in a year from now. So next slide, Colin. And then things that we need to stop doing. Next slide, Colin. So if you look at that, just small numbers, which I think is good. If something jumped up there like 60, I'd be like, oh, okay, 60 responses. But, there are things that we need to look at and pay attention to. But the numbers of things that we need to stop doing, it's pretty low responses in there. So, but, teaching, controversial topics, engaging with activist parents, things like that. Current start times, that was, I think, driven from our K-8 folks maybe, or our elementary folks about their start time and their school time. So anyway, so lots of good information. It's always good for us to look back and reflect. But again, I think every single year, communication is identified as really good, and then things we can get better. And we can always get better at communication, and we can always get better at our academics. Those are things that we just need to always strive for. So with that, next slide, Colin. Any questions for me on my part from the board? And again, I just think this is a great tool that it just needs to stay part of our DNA, to go out and engage our community, and it gives me an opportunity to provide update on our work. We really talked about our internal assessments this year with the listening and learning, about the NWEA and iReady, and how our teachers are using that information to help our students grow. So it's a great platform for us to keep people informed on what's going on in the school district. So.
I did have one question.
Yes, sure.
On the survey, is there a spot for people to write an answer in that's not, that's not one of the choices, if it was something that they needed to?
I don't, go ahead,
Well,
Beth.
that's a good question,
Yeah.
because I was going to mention that you're seeing the top topics that come out when we tag all of the comments by topic, but Dr. Lake and I and the cabinet, we read through hundreds of comments. So it's all open-ended. It's not people selecting topics. It's those 3 open-ended questions.
That's a great point. So yeah, those questions are open-ended. It's not like, hey, what are we doing well? And we list things for them, a menu for them to pick. They can put anything, and there's some interesting things they can put in there. And to be honest with you, it may be a singleton, but there's some interesting things in there. So we'll just leave it at that. But all 3 of those questions are open-ended. Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And so if we go to the next slide, the listening and learning really lends itself really well to this new requirement through MSIP 6, which began this year, as you all know. And so as part of their continuous improvement portion, districts are required to survey students, staff, and parents to obtain feedback that we use in developing our Compass goals that we do every year, and then our 5-year strategic plan that will be coming up again next year. We're already doing that with our parents through listening and learning and the other tools that I'll mention. So these are the indicators that are included. Student voices are heard and respected. School culture and climate data and reports are provided to stakeholders. That's what we're doing tonight. And educator teams address positive classroom learning environments. So if we go to the next slide, the MSIP report states that education agencies can use their own locally developed surveys. These are the surveys that Lindbergh uses. We have a listening and learning survey, which has primarily parent feedback. We do have a staff survey that's been presented to the board previously, and we have our social emotional learning student screeners, which have also been presented previously to the board. And those staff and student results are included in this presentation for your information, but we won't re-present those tonight. But we do want to present the parent data, and so if we go to the next slide, we'll see that those questions that we ask parents, one more slide, is school system assures student voices are heard and represented. And these questions were asked as part of the listening and learning survey that you saw had 471 responses. 78% strongly agree or somewhat agree. And if we go to the next slide, we'll see that school system provides school culture and climate data and reports periodically to all stakeholders. 76 strongly agree or somewhat agree. We're formalizing this through this report, which you'll see once a year. But I think this speaks, both of these speak to the communication that comes from our buildings and from our district and those other surveys that are provided. So as I mentioned, we have the staff data and the student data for your information as well, and that will be posted in board docs. But at this time, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Is there, for these parent surveys, for the ones who say strongly disagree or somewhat disagree, is there like an open-ended question as to why?
We did not have an open-ended question with these questions. That's something that we could do in the future to get a little bit more feedback about why parents are answering the way that they do.
Yeah, so if they select that, then maybe it takes them to a menu where they can provide some feedback. But, 76 is good. I would like it to be closer to 90%, 80 in between 85 and 90. So, this is good. So it's good data for us to use and move forward. So, we kind of like to start at 80, and once we hit 80, then we like to go 5 points higher, and then we like to get them in that 90 range if we can. So, for sure.
And I think formalizing this report this year and years moving forward, it will share that out with our parents in our e-note communications, and so just raising awareness of it too will hopefully drive that number up. But we can add feedback to the survey.
And was this part of the same survey that Dr. Lake was presenting?
Yes.
So it's the same number of parents?
There were fewer responses on these two questions. Not every parent answered each of these questions, but I think that they were around 160, 170 parents who answered these specific questions, but it was available to everyone.
Is there a requirement on how many parents you get? Does the state require you have to have so many parent involvement or anything like that?
No. And some of those responses on the listening and learning, as you saw the breakdown, they weren't all parents, so probably about half were parents.
Thank you. Excuse me. We'll move to 11.0203, 02, Missouri School Improvement Program MSET 6 Annual Performance Report. Dr. Sparks.
So we have a clear theme tonight around our Missouri School Improvement Program, whether it's our feedback from our parents or talking about the annual performance report, which I'm going to do tonight. But before I go into that, if you go to the next slide, Colin, just kind of to give a frame of reference, MSIP 6, because we love acronyms in education. MSIP 6 is the 6th iteration of the Missouri School Improvement Program, which started back in the early 90s. So you can just kind of see how this has evolved over time. And as we go to the next slide, the annual performance report is really that one metric that is used to kind of consolidate how districts are doing in comparison with state accreditation expectations, state accountability. So keep in mind what I'm sharing with you tonight is one piece of information that we use and that we look at as a district to determine, how are we doing, what are our opportunities, what are our strengths, but it is not the only piece of information that we use in order to make that determination. So going to the next slide, what you see here is a summary of what our APR, again, acronyms, Annual Performance Report, is. We earned 86.7%. That is comprised of 70% student data and 30% continuous improvement, which is like the work of the district. So when you look at that 70% of student data, that is our MAP test. That includes the grade level assessments in grades 3 through 8, as well as the end of course assessments at the high school. It also includes data around success-ready students, and I'll go into more detail in that in just a minute, as well as graduation rates and our graduate follow-up on how our students are doing after they leave us. And then on the continuous improvement side of it, this is really the work of the district. Our what we call our compass, but is our continuous school improvement document as a district, and then also required documentation that we need to ensure happens to move the district forward. So as we go to the next slide, I think it's really important to identify that MSIP 6 is not comparable to MSIP 5. And this graph gives a really clear delineation as to why. What you see is state level data from across the state, so not Lindbergh specific, it's all state data regarding MSIP 5, so what the data looked like for the APR in the 2017-18 school year. That is the green line represented in the bar graph. And then compared to the distribution of MSIP 6, which is the purple line. So what you'll notice as you look at the green line, it was much more of a criterion referenced expectation for MSIP 5, where districts were able to relatively, I don't want to say easily because it was all, very student driven, earn accreditation with distinction. When the metrics were changed with MSIP 6, it really turned it into what we would classify as a bell curve, where there's a continuum of how districts were ranked using this data. And there's lots of reasons for that. Most of it comes down to the metrics of how the MAP test is scored in MSIP 6 versus MSIP 5. So this is not related to any change in student data necessarily, but how student data is measured. And that's a really important consideration as we look at this data. As you go to the next slide, you can see another example of this. So back in 2017-18, we had 329 districts who were accredited with distinction according to MSIP 5. MSIP 6 has 4 districts that meet that criteria. Now, one thing I think is important to make note of, no accreditation decisions are being made on MSIP 6 this year. This is a pilot year. It is not in full implementation mode yet, but it just shows the difference in how the metrics have shifted quite significantly. And then when you look at accredited districts, you'd see 219 previously would have fallen into the accredited range. Now that is, I can't see it from here, 435, I believe. So a significant difference in how the metrics are calculated. So again, just to highlight, these are not the same systems, so the data is not comparable. If the data were comparable, we would expect to see those numbers more in line with one another. And then going to the next slide, you can see the distribution, and this is really interesting because when you look at those 4 districts that are considered accredited with distinction based on MSIP 6, 3 of the 4 are K-8 districts. The largest district is only 660 students. So the metrics really do skew how the data can be analyzed and looked at from district to district. So this just gives you kind of the breakdown by region of where the districts lie in terms of what would be considered unaccredited, provisional, accredited, and accredited with distinction. So where we fall right now, as of this moment, and again, we are in a pilot year, so no accreditation is changing, is accredited. As a district.
And can I just point out for people who can't read this, there's not a single school in the St. Louis region that was accredited with distinction.
That is correct.
Or Kansas City.
Yeah, or Kansas City.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And again, I go back to the reason why you see the difference in the metrics is, well, and I can explain that as we go into future slides, but we had a full slate of points available as Lindbergh district because we have a large enough population to have diverse student groups. So all elements of student groups were counted. Districts that are significantly smaller don't have all populations with enough student groups to be able to have any point designation. So you get that skewed outcome. Additionally, if you're a K-8 district, the high school success ready standards don't apply. So again, not a full range of points that are applicable to the districts. So it's some important things to make note of just as we look at this data. Not anything bad, just something to be aware of. As we go to the next slide, we can actually start to see where we scored as Lindbergh. So out of a total of 180 points, we earned 156.1, which is that 86.7 I referenced earlier. What you note on the performance is those are those MAP tests, and of course, and some other data that I'll go over in just a moment. And then continuous improvement, those 52 points relate to the work of the district. So as we go to the next slide, you can actually see the breakdown. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the academic achievement status and growth because we're all very familiar with MAP and end of course assessments. Other than I want to point out two things. We are looking at the status of our students, both as an overall population as a district, and then also student groups. These are specific groups of students we want to highlight that have been traditionally underperforming. So students who are socioeconomically disadvantaged, have IEPs, students in various minority populations who we've seen achievement gaps with in the past. So that's what that student group designation represents. How the data for those individual groups of students looked compared to all students. And what you'll notice as you look at the status of our achievement is that as a district, we were either have met the target or are on track. The next layer, the next rows, you'll notice that there is growth for both English language arts and mathematics. That's actually looking at student growth from year to year. And what we are proud of is that we're seeing, and this has been a conversation as a district. We've been focusing on growth. We've been focusing on, we want to look at the individual student and make sure they are growing at the rate that really demonstrates they're getting what they need from us. So you can see there that within all students and our student groups, we're either hitting average or above average growth.
Can I ask you a question here too? Are they following like the cohorts to see how they improve?
That is correct.
Or they're just?
That is cohort growth.
Okay.
Yes, yes. So then when you get to success-ready students, this is an interesting one, and I'll be honest with you, when we first saw this data, we took a little gulp and we were like, woo, we've got some work to do. And then since then, we've dug into it, and I think it's worth a conversation. So when you look at the success-ready students, where it says CCR assessments, those are college career readiness assessments, that is looking at our senior class, our graduating class, and the students who took ACT, AccuPlacer, ASVAB, ACT Work Keys, those assessments that students take in order to propel them to their next level. So in order to get full points on that, it's what the students' scores were on those assessments, which we know our student scores are high, but it's also the number of students who take the assessments. So we started having a conversation around, as we are working on our work with individual and career and academic planning, how do we really look at individual students and ensure that we're matching the right assessment to what their plans are for the future? And we met on that and really drilled down quite a bit to that data. And one of the things that gives us pause, because I would have told you if you and I would have been talking 2 weeks ago, I would have said 100%, we need to make sure every one of our students is taking every one of these assessments in order to meet their needs. But when we started drilling down to the data, we found some really interesting things. And a lot of it is because there's such a change in post-secondary education. We have students who are going to St. Louis University who never take an ACT. They don't need it. It's ACT optional at quite a number of universities. So if you're a student who's able to go to your university of choice, still get the financial aid packages that you need, what's the purpose in taking an ACT? This is a conversation that's shifted quite a bit recently. AccuPlacer, which is the assessment that our students would take if they are going to community college. Not all of our students, even those going to our community college, need to take the AccuPlacer, because if they have taken AP and upper level credited courses, those advanced credit courses, which you can see we get 10 out of 10 points on that, they are exempt from taking the AccuPlacer because they've already demonstrated academic readiness to move forward to the St. Louis Community College or whatever community college that may be. So it really opens up a quandary for us to get points, which of course we want to get points. We want our community to know that we're doing great things for kids. We actually have to look at maybe making students take assessments that they don't need. And that's a question, and it's worth a conversation, because universally, there's an easy fix to that point value. Ethically, it's a question.
Is the state aware, the state board, and then, DESE, that colleges aren't requiring the ACT?
I mean, I would assume that, but I have not personally had that conversation.
I mean, it's even
I
Ivy League
want to
colleges.
disagree just a little bit on this one, when it comes to this piece, because sometimes post-secondary plans, they may not know. So I did like that we gave everybody the opportunity during the school day even to do that.
When we did ACT for all?
Exactly, yeah. And maybe it doesn't have to be ACT for all, but doing something during the school day and having the students have that, whether they were choosing the ASVAB or the ACT or something like that. I do think we need to just dig in a little bit further, and task force committee group or whatever you've been doing, just that's my only question. I would like to continue to look at that differently and not just say, oh, they don't need it for SLU, but maybe they move from SLU and maybe they move into Arizona State, and all of a sudden they need that ACT, and now they're taking it far away from the curriculum which they've been taught. So I would like to dig into that further.
And I don't disagree. I mean, that was the meat of our conversation, is because we have been doing so much work with individual career and academic planning for students, why isn't the assessment component part of that initial conversation when we're talking with kids starting in 8th grade? So to really be intentional about finding the right match for kids, I think we're underutilizing ACT work keys as well. So that's an opportunity. So 100%, I agree. Yeah. The question then becomes, at what point where students already have a clear path and say, I don't want to take that, I don't need to take that, do we?
So, but to Kathy's point, and I think it's a good point, pretty much all of our kids will go into the workplace, right? And that's the ACT keys. The work keys. So even if they're going to go to SLU and they're not going to go in the workplace right away and they don't want to take the ACT, but they could take, I do think you're exactly right. I think we've talked about personalized learning for 5 years, right? And we want to meet kids where they are and provide opportunities and make sure we're doing a good job when they leave us. So, I mean, I do. And, these are, if we want to chase these points, they're easy points to chase and get. And if we would have gotten 10 out of 10, we'd be at 90% almost. So, I mean, so that's an easy fix for us. And especially because our kids will do well on those assessments if we give them. So, I agree.
Yeah, I think there are definitely students to be captured there, no matter what. The question is, to what degree do we require that for every individual student? As we go to the next slide, so you can, actually, I feel like I've spoken about this already. So the opportunity for growth around supporting college and career readiness, around ACT work keys, and AccuPlacer. And then as we go to the next slide, you can see the work around continuous improvement. So these are the point values that have been designated to the district based on our improvement plan, which is our compass. I realize there's a lot of acronyms here. KEA stands for Kindergarten Entry Assessment. So we assess every kindergarten student about a month into school to determine their readiness for content, what information we can glean in order to support them as they continue their educational career. ICAP, that is that individual career and academic planning that I referenced earlier, that we start working with students in 8th grade. Attendance is something as a district we've been working on since COVID. This is something we've seen universally across the state, where attendance points have been limited because society has shifted in terms of the expectations around attendance. We as a district expect our students to be in attendance. We know that good habits of attendance lead to learning opportunities for students and achievement for students. So it's a message we continue to work on. CTE expansion, we were not eligible for CTE expansion, not just us, but no one was eligible for CTE expansion points. Those are career technical education programs. We were not eligible because it's a pilot year this year. However, we actually have 2 CTE programs that have been instituted in the last year, so we were a little disappointed that we weren't eligible because we have expanded both family and consumer science and our teaching careers CTE strands. So that is something that we would have had access to if it had been another year of this process.
I do have a question about that. I know since we have some of our own CTE, but a lot of districts in St. Louis County only use SSD's career and technical ed. So how would that work with the points?
Well, these points are really just for expansion, so if you add programming. So
Okay.
it's really about encouraging that ongoing
So if
innovation.
there's a year where you're not adding something, those points aren't available to you.
Correct, and these are always bonus points, so you're not penalized in any
So
way
it's
if you
like
don't
extra
get.
credit.
These are extra credit.
We won't get them extra because we already had them.
I don't know that for sure. That is not something that I'm clear on yet. I will advocate that if we missed them in this year, that we should deserve to get them in another year.
So this is a perfect example of extra credit grade inflating. So this would be a grade inflator of our APR.
And then the final component is really just making sure we turn our work in on time. So this is our work around the annual performance report. And if you look at the last slide here, just what does this tell us?
Hold on, can I
Colin,
ask
if
a
you
question? Can I
Yeah.
just comment about the attendance? I loved the letter that we sent out with the 90% on there. I think that's really important. And I know that the high school, we have credit bearing. And then we have the elementary kids that love to come to school. And then we have the middle school kids. And so in looking at that and maybe just going over goals with the students about the importance with them and stuff like that, like in a flyer time, I'm gonna say that wrong, but whatever.
Flyer time is correct.
Thank
You are
Okay.
correct.
Flyer time to talk to them about that would be great. Because like I said, I think it's covered elementary and high school does a great job. Thank you.
That's a good suggestion. So just in conclusion, what the APR tells us, obviously the college and career readiness opportunity that we just talked about in terms of the assessments and aligning those assessments to students and what their needs are. Focus on growth matters. That's the work we've been doing, focusing on student learning, student growth and learning, and that obviously has resulted in our APR scores. Continuing to prioritize attendance, as we just discussed, continuing to offer and expand opportunities for students. We've done a lot with programming, and I anticipate we are going to continue expanding programming for our students. Supporting diverse populations of students. Our student groups are not performing at the same level that our total population of students are, so that's work that we continue to do. And then I think this last one is really kind of setting us up to the next presentation that we have tonight. We really need to work on increasing the relevance of the assessment tools that are used. Right now, the APR is focused on MAP and end of course assessments, and we have opportunities to make a more relevant system work for accreditation. All right, any additional questions?
Back to you for Success Ready. Oh, Dr. Lake wants to talk.
No, go.
Okay, so Success Ready Student Network, Dr. Sparks again.
It's actually me starting out.
Doesn't say that.
I know. So it's actually me. So, all right, here we go. So Success Ready Network, just for those who are watching online or going to watch this later and who are here, we came to the board earlier in the school year. It's a group of about 25 school districts from around the state that is partnering with our Department of Education. So you just saw the accreditation system, the state test that they have, but our State Department is also recognizing that there are different ways to do it, and school districts that have been engaging their community and thinking differently about the student experience and having assessments that are meaningful for the kid, for the teacher, and for the parent during that school year time, instead of waiting till the end of the year, taking a test and getting the results sometime that next fall of that next grade level of the school year. So we've been doing work. And so I'm gonna give you just a quick history of the Success Ready group, and part of this work is what we call a waiver, and Tara's going to get into the details of the waiver, but I'm just going to kind of give the audience and people watching on YouTube and the board just kind of a global overview of the history of this work, the Success Ready Network. In locally, Parkway is in this, Ladue is in this, Melville, Afton, Pattonville,
Rittner,
and Rittner are in this group with us locally. So it's a diverse group of schools that are designing this system. So next slide. So talked about this earlier with our listening and learning. We started engaging our community about thinking differently about the student experience. We developed our Lindbergh Life Success Skills during that time to help us develop a well-rounded approach to educating our kids. We also joined the Success Ready group, and we basically, before we became a member or the group got in, there was a focus group and a study group, and that was during the 21-22 school year. And we were fortunate enough to have a voice into that focus group that presented to the State Board of Education about creating this network. And we had a district facilitation member from our teaching and learning team that was a member of that study group. And then we also had a parent, somebody that was organizing this work reached out to us and said, you know, we hear you guys are having these kinds of conversations we're talking about. Is there a parent? We took a parent from our teaching and learning board advisory, and they were a part of that focus group, basically coming up with what would this network look like that they presented to the State Board of Education. So next slide. So that's kind of our journey. We talked about that. Go ahead and go to the earlier. So again, these are the 12 success measures that we asked our community to rank that goes right along with our work in the Success Ready network. Next slide. And then again, these are the 5 success measures that we have that tie directly to the work of the Success Ready group. Next slide. And then this is kind of a journey in the state of Missouri, and I think it started about 10 years ago with Mike Fulton, and when he was the superintendent in Pattonville, and then there were some other districts, like there was a couple on Kansas City, and it was around when there became legislation to allow school districts to innovate, to think differently about the student experience and what that can look like, having academic measures, but really also focusing on things like industry recognized credentials. Can we get so much college credit for certain students? Work experience kinds of things, internships. So providing that as a way of accountability as well. And so that work started about 10 years ago. And then when we looked at the Missouri MOAP, that's the one that started. We joined it in my first year, right, 18-19, but it was already going prior to me getting here. And this was them looking at assessments that measure growth. Example, our NWEA, iReady. Those are examples of what we call through assessments that Tara will talk about coming up. So this kind of just breaks down. This is the Senate bill from the spring that says basically that we need to be, you know, supporting high school to get people college, career, and workplace ready for every student. So again, also has legislative support to be doing this work as well in our Success Ready network. So talked about the commission and the task force that presented to the College Board last June. The task force really thought when they presented to the state board last year that they would say, you know, that's good, let's do another year of work and then let's fine tune it. They were so excited from the task force. They said, go find that group of school districts and create your network, come back to us in a year with potentially a waiver that would allow us to do different types of assessments and different kinds of accountability with our students in developing this, not just for us, but for the entire state as a model. So there's 25 districts that are working on this, again, with partnership with DESE. Next slide. And then this kind of just lays out the whole timeline for the work in the state of Missouri, so you can kind of look at that. It was the proficiency-based. Again, proficiency-based is standards-based, so we use the term standards-based in our district. They use the word proficiency-based. You know, this year we rolled out the standards-based grading at our elementary level, and then that kind of just walks through the timeline that's kind of led us to this network. And so that's kind of the history. So this isn't something new. This isn't something random. This is a snapshot of the conversation in the state of Missouri. Also, the last 5 years, our conversation around this type of work. And so I think it just kind of lays out that this isn't something that, oh, last year we decided to do this. This has been work and talk that's been going on in our state for quite some time. And so we're kind of at that point where we're ready to put the rubber to the road and do some work and some planning, and we're super excited about that. And Tara, I think the next slide is you, that you're going to jump in and kind of talk about the waiver and what we're going to ask you in April to vote on, to say, yes, we want to go forward with this waiver and present it with a group of other school districts from around the state to the State Board of Education in June. So there you go, Tara. Any questions for me? All right, thank you.
I think this slide really demonstrates the scope of the impact of who is a part of the Success Ready Students Network. You can see it's 56 Missouri public and charter school member districts. It represents 10% of the districts, but 34% of the students in the state of Missouri. So in terms of volume of impact and really having some teeth in order to make a change for the future of what education looks like in the state of Missouri, there is significant involvement here. So as Dr. Lake referenced already, we are a part of the system design zone. That means we are at the front end of designing this work. We are one of 25 districts who are in that category, and then there's another 31 districts who are doing the learning and the innovations to prepare themselves to be able to move forward. What's really noteworthy about this as well is that we're partnering with universities, with regional organizations, and just today, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education newsletter referenced this work and how this work is influencing the future of MSIP. So MSIP 7 will be based on the work that comes out of the Success Ready Students Network. So a lot of momentum behind this. Next slide, please. And this just kind of shows demographically where the populations are coming from. So Dr. Lake referenced the 6 districts within our region, but you can see that the districts are also inclusive of Kansas City, Southwest Missouri, Northeast Missouri, and Southeast Missouri, as well as Central Missouri. So again, all different types of districts who are involved in this work, urban, suburban, rural, which is significant because when we're touching all parts of the state, we're touching all types of needs and diversity. And so when we go to the next slide, you can just kind of see what's at the heart of this work. Students really are at the heart of the work, and identifying what knowledge, what skills, and what dispositions do they need to have in order to be successful for life beyond school. That means we have work to do as a network to redesign assessment systems, support innovation, engage and partner with the real world with business collaborations, and then in the end, we'll implement policy changes because that's going to be what makes this happen universally across the state. So when we go to the next slide, Missouri's competency-based definition, this is what Dr. Lake was referencing earlier. We call this standards-based learning. And whether you call it competency-based learning or standards-based learning, the concept is the same. It's that you are getting at the root of what students need in order to move forward in their own learning journey and to ensure that they are getting those skills, that knowledge, and they have the dispositions to be successful for what comes next. So when we look through this, this is the work of our district. So when we talk about students being empowered daily, that's student agency, giving voice and choice to our students. Assessment being meaningful, that is our NWEA assessments where it has immediate impact on what's happening in the classroom. Those are classroom assessments that influence what teachers do next to support students. That timely differentiated support that comes as a result of having good assessments. I could go through each of these individual bullet items and point out how they align to our work, but this is the work of our district and the work that we have been doing. So it's a very good marriage as we go forward with the work of the Success Ready Students Network. Next slide, please. So, at the heart of all of this, we have to start with assessment because if we don't know what students know and can do, we can't influence what happens next. So again, I feel like I'm reiterating, is our assessment meaningful? Is it an accurate reflection of what students can do? Is it actionable for teachers? We know we can turn around and use that data to support learning for students because it's informing instruction. And it then drills down specifically to what are the individual needs of a student, and then how do we communicate that with families? That's the goal of a really good assessment system. When we go to the next slide, it's really clear that the MAP test does not offer this for us. It is not meaningful. Students take the test in the spring, reports come out in the fall. There's no immediacy there. It is a one-time, we often refer to it as an autopsy. Teachers don't have any relevant data that they can use to inform instruction and to support student learning as a result of it. It's definitely not personalized. So the work of the Success Ready Students Network is we have to change our assessment system in order to change our programming in support of individual students and have a really strong standards-based or competency-based learning environment. Next slide, please. So again, the work that we want to do, we really want to focus on assessment for learning. Where are students? Where are we going with them? How do we help them get there? By having a good assessment, we can do all of these things where we are providing timely, differentiated support for students, helping them to set goals, monitoring their progress toward those goals, making informed decisions about what comes next instructionally for students. Next slide, please. So that takes us to what is fondly called the demonstration project. We are demonstrating to the state that we can do something different, which means in order to do something different, we have to ask for some exceptions to the current way of doing business as a state. So that's where the waiver comes from. So we are looking at partnering with DESE to propose this spring that starting next school year, we would have some exemptions to some of the state requirements. And I'm going to go through each of those requirements pretty quickly here. And then as Dr. Lake referenced, these will come up again in April for approval as to whether or not we are going forward to be a part of this waiver. So if you go to the next slide, you can see the first commitment. So as a district, we are looking to make commitments that we will focus on growth to standard assessments. That is essentially what we do with our NWEA assessments. We know what the standards are. We are looking at to students growing towards those assessments. So that is the way we would measure students. As we go to commitment number 2, you can see that it would require that we participate with DESE in a federal waiver request. So right now, the State Board of Education has determined that the MAP test is what we will do to meet federal requirements for assessment. So we would have to go forward and do a waiver in order to do a different model, to use our model for our assessment accountability. So that would require a waiver from federal assessments. Next slide. Using formative end of course and market value assets. We don't talk a lot about market value assets. We talk about Diploma Plus. It is the same thing. So you'll start to hear these words used interchangeably. But it's this idea that we can identify other avenues of student success outside of a traditional assessment process. So when we're looking at opportunities for our kids to do internships, which we know, when we're looking at college credit, what we do through our dual credit, through our early college program. So programs that we already have in place that are an additional asset to students that are beyond the traditional school experience. So how we can use some of those measurement tools in order to demonstrate that students are really ready for success beyond the school environment. So we go to the next slide. This gets into working with the state on what that accountability system would look like. How do we capture that data that we're collecting from our own assessments and from our own college career readiness market value assets in order to build an accountability system? We'd be committed to participating in that. And I really want to highlight the italics component that's at the bottom of this slide, and it was on a few previous slides. In doing this waiver, we are asking for exceptions to be made from part of MSIP 6, not all of MSIP 6. There are components of MSIP 6 that are really strong. We've even talked about some of the data and some of the processes that we've done as a district have been improved because of MSIP 6. So this just gives us some flexibility in what some of those accountability measures would be with regard to MSIP 6. And you can see that that's still under development. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to determine what that would be. As we go to the next slide, we start to get more into the ways that we can be creative with the student experiences. So how do we create opportunities for students to learn at a pace that is appropriate for them? How do we look at attendance differently? Right now, we do a lot of measurement of student success based on attendance. How much time were you sitting in a seat? How much time did you spend in that course? Well, for students who may be able to move more quickly through instruction, we'd have some flexibility to look at that differently. This is probably one of the longer hauls of this work, designing these types of systems, and there's a lot of conversation and a lot of professional learning about it, but this is a really amazing opportunity for our students and for our system overall. The next slide. Engaging in formal research design. So there is a lot of research. Like we have to connect the data of our NWEA assessments to our student readiness. So working with various partners to really dig in on the research and to use that to guide that the outcomes that we want for students are really what's happening from what we planned. So there is an evaluation component of this. And then I believe the final commitment is that we are committed to ongoing professional learning. We've been doing a lot of professional learning through this process already, but it has been pretty limited to our central office staff, so we have the opportunity to continue to expand that professional learning beyond us. We are moving into our instructional coaches participating in some of this professional learning this summer. We'll start to expand beyond that, but there are lots of opportunities that we've already been able to engage in with very well vetted academic partners in order to start this conversation, and it will be anticipated as part of continuing the conversation. Next slide, please, Colin. So here's our timeline. Obviously, we talked about this in our January board workshop, the work we've been doing with the Success Ready Students Network. We've met with faculty. We've talked with all each faculty, our parent leadership group. We're going to expand this to our parent leadership group again and go deeper on these specific commitments now that these have been drafted out and kind of in final stage. We are also going to work with our board advisories. We're having a special session after spring break with board advisories to get feedback around this work and this waiver specifically, so that in April, we have additional feedback to bring this to you for vote on whether or not as a district we are moving forward to be a part of this waiver that would go to the State Board of Education in June for approval.
And I think it's important that March meeting just isn't board advisories. It's my student advisory's invited. We've invited the Chamber of Commerce. We've invited business. So it is a community, but there is our board advisories there. But this is a community engagement that says, here's our work. And during my listening and learning, we introduced to all of those groups that we were a part of this network. And so it's really just providing them an update on the work and where we are.
And then assuming that the State Board of Education approves this in June, that means that the waiver would go into effect for next year. And so we would be participating in a pilot where we are using our own assessment data for developing an accountability system. And then ultimately, that would inform what the state does for the next iteration of MSIP, which would be MSIP 7. Next slide, please. Again, this work is not happening in a vacuum. It is connected to the governor's priorities around workforce and education. It has come about because of bipartisan legislative support. Our Missouri State Board of Education is involved. Our Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is involved, and we are not at the forefront of this work. This has already been happening across the nation in various states. So we have models that we can look to as we continue to develop it. And as we look at the last slide, it's really already connected to what we do. These are the dispositions and skills we want our students to have as they go out into the world after graduating Lindbergh High School or Lindbergh students. So continuing to grow this work and develop this work is really our focus. Any questions or comments?
Do all 56 schools that are participating do the same thing, or is it individual for each school?
So right now, there are still questions. So there are, for us, we are doing NWEA as our assessment. There are other districts that are using Renaissance or iReady. So we are going under the assumption right now that we are individually going to be able to utilize our own assessments. We have not gotten feedback from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education that they're going to limit that. But our expectation would be that we can use our own systems in order to create this.
And I would say this, the 75% of the 25 that would be a part of this use NWA as their assessment.
And I think it's noteworthy that that's really an expectation of ours, to switch, to pivot, as someone likes to say, to another assessment system in a short period of time would not behoove our students.
I was just going to say thank you. I know that the people in Matt and I's district think that Lindbergh has their stuff together, and the fact that it's matching even this last little graphic here and everything that's happening there is awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Been 5 years of conversation and work with 2 years of a pandemic in there.
Anyone else? Okay. There are no other reports this evening, so we will now move to 12.0 citizen communication regarding non-agenda items, and we have one this evening, Mr. Lawson. And there is a 3-minute time limit.
I won't need 3 minutes. I've had a lot of practice speaking to time over the last several weeks. I just wanted to take a chance to say thank you to the board. It is Board Appreciation Month, and I've seen a glimpse of what it takes to do what you guys are doing up here. And I really am appreciative of everything that you guys have done and all of the support you've given me, all of the information, all of the access everyone up here has given me. So I really appreciate it. And then I'm also going to take the opportunity to shamelessly plug, if you haven't seen the board candidate forum from last night, highly recommend you go watch that. That's for you and for anyone else that's watching here. It's on the YouTube channel. It's one of the best run forums I've seen, and I'm partial because I'm in it. But I did want to just say thank you to all of you, and that's all I've got. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thirteen recess. As we already conducted our executive session, there is no need, and we will move to 15.0 adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn board meeting 1570?
So moved.
Motion by Kathy,
Second.
second by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Board meeting 1570 is